In 2020, the Polish Water Authority decided to contract the elaboration of so-called National Program of Surface Water Restoration. The time for preparing this was very short. It was several months. Thus, it was impossible to prepare this program using the field investigation. It was prepared using the desktop work and using the existing data, but I'm going to present the general approach. Most of Polish water bodies have not achieved good ecological status. In most of rivers, we can suppose that the alteration of hydromorphology is the main factor responsible for non-achieving the good ecological status. For addressing this problem, some river restoration projects are implemented in Poland, but the scale of application is still unsatisfactory against needs. In fact, we have several river restoration projects in the whole country, and probably need the several hundreds of restoration projects to achieve the environmental objective of the Water Framework Directive. For assessing the needs, the Water Authority contract elaboration of the national program of the river restoration. The elaboration of that program is one of the niches which was prescribed in the first revision of River Basins Management Plan for Poland. We understand here river restoration as each deliberate improvement of the river hydromorphology. The assumption was that the document should identify whether each specific river water body requires restoration or not. It means the objective was the identification of the areas requiring restoration. The document should show the road direction of the restoration measures which should be implemented for each of water body requiring restoration. But of course, it can be done only using the desk studies and only using the existing data. The effect should be only as good as the used data was. That, of course, proposing the restoration measures still requires more detailed analysis on the local scales, and of course still requires the field survey. The assumption was that the national program of river restoration will be the preliminary document, and the final decision on the implementation of restoration measures and the timetable of this should be implemented to the second revision of the River Basins Management Plan. But of course, the assumption of the Water Authority was that we will find only several rivers in Poland which need restoration, and most of them are more or less okay and don't need the specific niches. The idea is that the program of river restoration will be connected with all planning documents which exist in the Polish system of water management planning and will influence all of that documents. The idea is the diagnosis of the problem in each river water body using the criteria for designation of the water bodies requiring restoration, and to build the hierarchy list showing the priority areas which are showing the most urgent needs of river restoration, and proposing restoration measures for each section. 5 criteria was used for selecting the water body which require restoration. Meeting at least one of that criteria is the selection. The first criteria is the need of restoration of migration pathway for diadromous fish, or restoring the habitat connectivity for Natura 2000 protected fish. Because in the Polish system of assessing the fish habitats in the Natura 2000 sites, we have requirements to minimum longevity of the section without the barriers significant for that particular species of the fish. That if that requirement was not met in the particular Natura 2000 site, the case was classified as the need of restoration habitat connectivity for the fish protected in the Natura 2000 site. The second criterion was a need of achieving the good ecological status and or good ecological potential of the water body, which means in fact the main objective of the water frame of the directive. It was interpreted as the classification of each water body, which currently has not certainly good ecological status or ecological potential and has the altered hydromorphology. It was transferred from the management plan of the protected areas. The fourth criterion is the ensuring the link between rivers and associated lakes requiring restoration. And the fifth criterion was other water management needs or social reasons. It was according to the public survey in which the citizens can propose the river restoration needs. Each criterion was scored in the point scale. The more points scored, the higher the needs for restoration was assessed. The total needs was summarized as a sum of the scores for all criteria. For each area requiring restoration, which means for each water body which was selected according to at least of one criteria, we prepare estimation what is possible to achieve. We identify the present water body hydromorphological quality using the so-called hydromorphological river index, the Polish indicator of the hydromorphological quality. It is between 0 and 1. We identify the water body hydromorphology alteration using the database of the hydromorphology. We identify the possible measures removing alteration, and we prepare the simulation of the hydromorphological river index after potential restoration and analyze will the condition of good ecological status of potential will be met using the assumption that for natural water bodies the threshold for the hydromorphology index, which is sufficient for restoring the good ecological status of the biotic elements, is 0.6. It is result of the analysis of the correlation between the index in current assessment of the Polish river and the assessment of the biological elements. And we calculate the achievable progress as a number which is the ratio between the hydromorphological index after and hydromorphological index before. Result of that analysis in the program is the map in which, in fact, almost all Polish rivers are identified as requiring at least some improvement of the hydromorphology. As you see, the first and second criterion was the most important one, but from each one, some selection is provided. Of course, in many cases, the same water body was selected under the more than one criteria. And we built the ranking, calculating the multimetrics as the sum of scores from each criteria, and the indicator of the position in the ranking by multiplication of the multimetrics of the restoration needs, which achievable progress assessment, which is the ratio between hydromorphological change, the index after restoration and the index before. The priority groups was the water bodies which high restoration needs and possibilities to achieve the environmental objectives with the high probability. It means the ranking index was very high. It was the 15% of the Polish water bodies. The second and the third groups was the less ardent water bodies, but in fact 91% of Polish water bodies was identified as requiring some hydromorphology improvements. How it can be achieved? The element of the program is the catalog of the potential restoration niches. It is nothing special. It is a simple list of activities which are usually used for river restoration. But of course, the catalog is rather long. The catalog is divided into several groups. The first group is a modification of the river maintenance. The second are the additional small niches which can be implemented under ordinary water management. The third are technical restoration niches, which need usually excavator. The next are the niches in the catchment area, and the next are supporting niches which are necessary but not provide the restoration effect ourselves. The part of the program was also the handbook of good practice for surface water restoration, which more detailed description of each measures from that catalog. It is available in the internet. But I'm going to focus on the first group, on the modification of the river maintenance measures. These are 14 kinds of restoration measures, from which at least several ones means, in fact, not doing something. At least several potential measures means that we should rather stop harmful practice and let the river restore themselves. It is similar to the idea of the river self-maintenance presented today by Przemek, but it is the view from the other hand, view from the point of view of the feasibility of achieving important restoration progress only by allowing the river spontaneous hydromorphological processes. For example, leaving the river for natural processes is sometimes very efficient. As I show using the case of Drawa and Płociczna, sometimes natural hydromorphological processes will usually lead to spontaneous restoration of at least some aspect of the hydromorphology. For example, woody debris in the river can be easily restored that way if the river is the forest river, and the restoration of the woody debris will be usually followed by restoration of other hydromorphological structure as the differentiation of the river bottom and the river dip and river current, initiation of the meandering of the river and providing the additional habitat for river biodiversity. Similarly, the chasing or limiting of the mowing of the plant on the river banks can easily restore the effective buffer zones, preventing inflow to the river, biogens from the field, and working as the effective biogeochemical barriers. Maintaining of the trees on the river banks, sometimes simple not removing the trees which grow spontaneously on the river banks, can enforce tortuosity of the river current, and can enforce the development of the river meandering, can also stabilize the river banks, and stabilize the development of the water development by shadowing the water, can also provide woody debris, which are the important factor for the next step of the spontaneous river self-restoration, and are of course biodiversity hotspots.
5 minutes left.
Okay. Not removing of the woody debris is clearly the measure which leads to the restoration of other hydromorphological aspect of the river current. In the most of Polish river, that wood is the key ecological feature, because most of Polish rivers are lowland rivers in the sandy landscapes, originally forested landscapes, which are no other kind of hard substrate than the dead wood. Accepting the gaps in the bank, erosive undercuts of the banks create biodiversity hotspots, and of course initiate the development of the meandering of the river and other hydromorphological structure. Not removing river sediments allow the development of the variation of the river bottom. Sometimes it is enough not to implement harmful practice for achieving significant progress in restoration. Of course, sometimes not. The passive approach is, in many cases, is not sufficient. Of course, it cannot address the problem of the barriers on the river. It cannot act if the river is very strongly transformed, and it will do not act well in low energy lowland river. We cannot remove the artificial barriers, both longitudinal and at the lateral. Dams and embankments, if we are going to remove such kind of barriers, we need to usually remove it by technical measures, because it will not be effective by spontaneous processes. But at least in some rivers, that approach can act and can provide the significant progress. The idea of the National Program of River Restoration was to use the spontaneous process first, and first do not disturb the spontaneous river restoration processes, implement technical restoration only if necessary. Of course, it was much more efficient for the less degraded rivers. We prepared a scheme, which is the triangle of pyramid of the practice of river management. The practice which are in the red circles are in fact the practice of not doing something. This is the practice of limiting of human activity and really on spontaneous hydromorphological processes. We assessed that in the program that 91 of Polish river water bodies need some hydromorphological improvements, which means need some restoration. But for at least 21% of them, these improvements might be achieved only by so-called basic package of the restoration measures. The basic package of the restoration measures, it is this part of the pyramid. This, in fact, are simple modification of the river maintenance, which in fact means mostly decreasing of the intensity of the ingression, and some additional very simple measures at the adding the some structures as the wood or gravel, which can be implemented without technical projects, which can be implemented as a part of the usual management of the river. That for the 21% of the Polish water bodies requiring restoration, implementing only this simple basic package of restoration measures, which is composed mainly on doing nothing measures, is enough for achieving the restoration objectives, and would be probably enough for achieving such hydromorphological status, which probably will be suitable for achieving good ecological status also of the biological elements. For next 41% of them, such basic package of restoration measures will be good starting points for the 2021-2027 period, and it is likely to produce significant progress towards good ecological status. I would like to accent that our assessment that 21% of rivers required only very simple of restoration measures, mainly focus on limiting of the harmful activities, is very similar to Przemek estimation, which assess that about 20% of Polish river should be designated to the river self-maintenance. Of course, the program is only the program. The program is only the paper exercise. It was only partly successful. Finally, the program is only partly included to the current revision of the river basins management plan, which in particular means that probably the objectives of the water framework directives will not be achieved for many of Polish water bodies in the deadline prescribed in the water directive. But we still believe that the national restoration program is the good idea for the future of water management in Poland. And what is the main message? We can achieve a lot of doing nothing and only stopping the harmful works in the rivers, only allowing the spontaneous processes of river self-restoration. Of course, we can achieve a lot, but we cannot achieve all. The technical restoration will still be necessary in many cases. But generally, I think that we are ready for the nature restoration law, at least concerning Polish rivers. Thank you.